What's going on, everybody? This is Andy Abramson jumping on another Friday conversation with my friend Steve Wick here. In fact, I think, Steve, this is your second time on, right?
Yeah, we did an interview, just kind of you talking about people living in smaller communities, and so
Yeah,
the
yeah.
the
So I
challenges
think
and
you're,
advantages.
yeah, I think you're our first time second guest. So welcome, welcome. You're the winner. Yeah. So let's do this real quick. Why don't you kind of give us a snapshot? Again, what's your role? Where you at? What kind of things you're overseeing right now?
Yeah. So officially, just so people know, I'm kind of out in a small rural community out here in northern Minnesota, and my role officially is the associate pastor discipleship, and kind of fills three big buckets. One of those is I'm working with kind of our small group, community group system. So there's kind of an adult ministry component to that. I'm building and developing and investing into the young adults. It's kind of one of my heartbeats out here. So I've been doing that for a couple of years. And I'm also working pretty significantly, probably the majority of my time actually, with the student ministries with the youth group.
Yeah. Yeah. And the reason I wanted to have Steve jump on this call is because one of the things that, we run into as we are talking to lots of different churches, lots of different ministries, lots of different people, is most churches, college or young adult ministry, is one of the last positions that's hired at all, but let alone full time, right? So most of the people that we are working alongside are either volunteer, they're bivocational, so they might be part-time and then working as a firefighter or a cop or whatever, or a lot of them have multiple roles. So it'd be like student pastor and college young adults, worship pastor and college young adults. So there's multiple, and usually it's like janitor and admin and website designer and all the other things that a lot of, younger people that who are doing college young adult ministry get roped into. And so we thought it would be just kind of a great conversation to acknowledge that, first of all, that's a reality for a lot of you who are listening on this call. It's not your only responsibility. It's not your only part of your job description. And so would love to just kind of jump in for a couple minutes with you today, Steve. And so what are, as you have been now navigating these waters for the last several years, what have been kind of some of the difficulties in overseeing multiple areas of ministry?
Yeah, I think some of it is a heart thing, and some of it is a what are you willing to let go of thing.
Mm,
So one of the things that I often navigate is when you're navigating through multiple different ministries, there just is not enough time to go around. So if you really want to deep dive into one area of ministry, and there's times where I've had say the student ministries where they need a lot of time poured into them. You end up putting a lot of time in there, but you also kind of know in the back of your head of, okay, how much time can I give there, knowing that I also have to keep kind of spinning these other plates.
yeah.
And there's this tension that you kind of live with of, well, I got youth ministry, but then how's this going to affect the young adults, and how will this affect the overall, like, the adult systems, the small groups in the church, and there's kind of this play back and forth where you're kind of like, man, I just can't do it all, which is a disadvantage and a big advantage,
Yeah.
because it forces other questions to come out.
Yeah.
I think the heart thing is, and one of the heart tensions that I've felt at times is when things are going really well in a ministry, you kind of get really excited about that one. And it can be a challenge at times to make sure that your heart is going after all of the ministries that are under your particular role.
Yeah.
If there's one that's harder than another, it takes a little bit more prayer and a little bit more pressing into that one to make sure that you're not just like, oh, but I just really want to hang out with young adults.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that, I think that one of the overall challenges is ministry by definition is a never ending to-do list, right?
Mm,
You could always be doing more. You could
mm,
disciple more students. You could work on your message a little bit more. You could, like, work on some of the systems more. You could meet with leaders more. You could do write curriculum more. And so then if you multiply that, on three, and I'm worship pastor, and I work community groups, and I do the website, and I'm youth, like, now not only in one area does the to-do list never end, but now you have three areas where the to-do list never ends. And sometimes it can be kind of overwhelming. And even I think the difficulty for me, even doing it 13 years of having college young adults as only a part of my job description, is like having to walk away from things and having to say no to things and having to be okay with where things are at, and beginning. And so I think that's one of the major, the difficulties of overseeing multiple areas. Yeah. So how about advantages though? Because I'm sure you are like me, Steve, that you have experienced some advantages of, wow, I do multiple areas, and maybe there is a benefit. What would be maybe some of the different areas or ways that you see kind of multiple ministries actually it benefiting the college young adult ministry?
Yeah. Man, my brain is coupling, just working on a couple already. But one of the things is, as you're building relationships with young adults, one of the blessings of their lives are they have a lot more flexibility.
Yeah.
And that flexibility comes with the benefit of as they're buying into the passion of discipling others and investing into others. Man, they will throw their lives into ministry.
Yes.
And I can't tell you the passion, the excitement, the energy, the time, how big of a blessing that is, not just for the individual ministries that they might be in, but actually for the overall health of a church or community.
That's good.
And so, like, an example for us is several of my young adult core team have also been pouring into the student ministries. And they're ones that I'm like, okay, tonight, this is what we're going to try to do. And they're like, okay, great. And they're ready to go because we've been spending so much time together. And they've got the passion, they've got the heart where you can just kind of like, you can actually step back and release things. I think another piece of that, even working with young adults and kind of the benefits even of overseeing multiple ministries, is you actually begin to get a little bit bigger vision of what's going on.
Yeah.
So in one sense, in the church, it opens your eyes to think in more than just one bucket or one area.
Yeah, that's good.
And man, there's like, the cool thing is when you're seeing things in one area, that can actually equip you to handle things in the other pieces that you might have under multiple ministries. And so, like, some of the stuff that we're talking with young adults and disciple making, discipleship, it affects student ministries, it affects adult ministries. And so it becomes an opportunity to be equipped a little bit more across the board too.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think my experiences have been the same as well, as thinking through, like, I look at the you talk about passion, like the bleed over of passion. I remember a few times we did some combo like missions trips where we took college students and young adults on those missions trips with us. And just, man, just the passion that it infused into other generations because of them being there. I mean, I saw like older people doing things that I would never have imagined that they would have, because there's a young adult next to them dancing on a stage or doing something crazy on a mission trip, playing capture the flag at 1 o'clock in the morning, and so you look at some of that even bleed over of passion. And you also talk about, I think was a great one as well as the availability, right? And man, if you need like something last minute, a lot of times, you call a young adult, a college student, they can come help you in some different area. And man, do they make great youth leaders for all-nighters and lock-ins. Seriously, like whenever we do, as a student pastor, whenever we do a lock-in, I'm like, how many college students, how many young adults could I get? Because they can stay up all night and do all the games, do all the things, and I can just kind of chill in the background once it gets to be 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock in the morning, and they can kind of keep rolling forward. So yeah, I think there's a benefit as well. So we talk about, oh, my heart's torn, my schedule's torn, but I think we also have to acknowledge as well that there is some benefit to it. Sometimes there's some payoff as we see those multiple areas of ministry. So here's the last question I'd love to jump on for a few minutes, Steve, is just what are maybe some ways in which you try to navigate, kind of doing multiple roles? Is it, in terms of maybe like time management or heart, or are there ways that you could maybe help somebody who's stepping into this for the first time?
Yeah. I think one of the things that's been a big help for me is keeping the mindset of how am I equipping others as I'm going
Mm,
into ministries. Um, so, for instance, got a young adult who has been investing in started with our young adult group, jumped into our youth group. And it's kind of one of the questions that I'm asking is how can I be equipping these leaders, and this young adult in particular, how can I help her equip her for whatever the next step might be for her?
mm,
And in doing so, in with keeping an equipping mindset to it, it also allows you to release and say, hey, I want to give them these things and give them an opportunity to take risks and step into what God might have for them next. And in one sense, you get to be a part of the journey where you're still building into their life, and equipping into another area. Um, I think one of the pieces that I have to, and I'll be honest, I have to keep coming back to, when it comes to the heart, is what's the point of what we're doing?
mm.
Um,
Yeah.
what's what is God doing through this? Even if sometimes you have to be okay with like, man, I could always do more. I want to do more,
Yeah.
and you got to go. You actually have to release and say, is what I'm doing? Am I going to trust God with this and say that this is enough? And trust and say, you know what, He's going to take that from and do with that what He already had planned in the first place.
Yeah.
Um, and so even in my own heart, I have to check that quite a bit. Where I'm like, oh man, because I get it. I'm like, man, I want to. Oh, let's keep going. Let's
Yeah.
do some more. And it's like, okay, I have to release that.
Yeah. Yeah. I think a couple other things too, as well, is I think it forces us to be super clear on the most important things, right? And I think, because I think sometimes in ministry we can get caught up in doing a lot of busy activities, but you talk about this equipping piece, right? If you only have a limited amount of time, I think how we balance those multiple roles is we spend time doing the most important things, right? And we equip people, we disciple students, we leverage relationships. We don't worry about Instagram, or we don't worry about like other kind of side things. And so I think that's a way that we can balance, is being really clear on what are those non-negotiable. And I would say maybe another thing is like, go into, and this has been helpful for me, and part of it probably depends on your personality, is be clear on kind of blocking time for specific areas of ministry, right? I think for me, sometimes where I would get caught into, I'll do a little bit of youth and then a little bit of young adult, and then I work on the website a little bit and a little bit of this and a little bit of that. And in some ways, you're kind of, because it's different categories, you have to kind of think differently. There are different parts. And so if you can go into maybe like, hey, Thursday morning, I'm going to spend 4 hours and work with the young adults or the students. I'm going to spend this time on Sunday nights working in this area. I think it can allow us to give more focused energy versus being scattered in a thousand different directions. So that was a couple kind of thoughts I had. So cool. Well, yeah, I think that's it. So appreciate your time, Steve, today. Any last comments before we jump off?
No, excited to be a part of these conversations, and
Cool.
uh, know that God's doing good things across the nation as we're jumping into and connecting with young adults.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, everybody, that's it for our Friday conversation today. Hope you have a great weekend, or whenever you're watching this. It could be a replay at some point down the road. We will catch you later. Thanks a lot.